Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. What would otherwise have become just another quiet American small town was thrust into the history books of the United States. Today, millions of people travel annually to the home of the turning point of the Civil War. And for 2 days each summer, if you look past the tourists, beyond the monuments, and through the tall grass of the battlefields, you'll find a select few. They come here to learn lessons from our past. They come here to become leaders of the future. They come here because they are among the few.
Never a bad time to be to Gettysburg. Welcome to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Not a bad time to be here because being that it is the 23rd of June, you guys are not about a week away from how this battlefield would have looked in 1863. So when you look out there...
I think you really have to point to the presentations that Colonel Doug Douds has done. He's been the subject matter expert at each one of the battlefield tours, and you can just tell the midshipmen and the staff and even the alumni are hanging on every word, because he just has a way of making that history come alive on a very personal level, talking about individuals, whether there were generals in command or company commanders, which the midshipmen aspire to be, or also even individual privates, the challenges they face when fear was overwhelming, but they rose up and did their duty, and I think that's what inspires midshipmen.
The three key themes of the class of 1977 Gettysburg Leadership Encounter all come together when the mids move out to the battlefields. That's where Colonel Doug Douds, a professor at the United States Army War College, brings the Civil War to life with his detailed retelling of the lesser-known stories of Gettysburg. From Pickett's Charge to Little Round Top to Cemetery Hill, loyalty, standards, and action are all woven into the fabric of the lessons he shares with the mids.
What became fascinating was not just listening to those stories, but watching the faces of the midshipmen as they were listening to it, because you could see in their eyes, self-confidence just starting to come together. And in other ones is, how am I going to be able to do this?
I think the battlefield part of the Gettysburg experience is what made it the most real. You can drive around and look at all the statues, and that's really great, but the stories that Colonel told, and actually walking through and having people die out of your ranks, and then him reenacting all the real life stories, bringing in real people, made it so much more realistic.
There's a brigade that gets shot up out on the first day, Brockenborough's brigade. It was already poorly led. They get shot up on the first day. Now they're facing 35 pieces of artillery firing from Cemetery Hill. In fact, they'll be so decimated by it, they'll break and run. The first sign things aren't going well. For us in Pickett's, our job as we come over is we are now going to angle, because the idea is these men that are coming straight across the field and us on an angle are all going to join right as we hit the road in front of this red barn.
The fact that Colonel knew so much about the Battle of Gettysburg, he can make it so real for us. And I think that really hit home for a lot of us, why we were there instead of just having it here at the Naval Academy, because he brought stories of leaders and of people who were leading men into a face-to-face firefight, which is harder than anything I can ever imagine. And so I think it really hit home for a lot of the company commanders and captains.
It's funny because in the first couple moments, we were walking to the battlefield and the grass was super high, and they were like, "Oh, watch out for ticks and might get bit." And at first, I was being super superficial. I was like, "Oh my God, I'm wearing shorts. It's really hot," But then I listened to what he was saying, and I said, these soldiers were fighting in much worse conditions than what I'm in right now, and I'm complaining in this ideal environment about ticks and the heat. And the fact that they had to fight for days and days and days, and they would think they were done, they were beat up, some of them were shot, some of them were wounded, and they had to keep going, marching, fighting. That to me was the biggest part that I felt, because things get tough and everyone around you is hurting. That is not a time where you need to say me, I'm hurting. Your brothers and sisters are fighting next to you, that means you keep going too. That not only resonates on the team, but that resonates, you know, as a military officer.
It's almost hard to put in words, especially when you have such a controversial battle. I mean, if you think about it, for some people standing there watching, it's like, why would I want to talk about the Confederates? They fought for something that like I shouldn't believe in. But when you take a step back and you be mature about the situation, these were families fighting for what they believed in. And I can agree to disagree, but just to simply understand, they gave everything they had. Men were standing there with gun wounds in their chest and their legs and still trying to shoot the enemy. People are sacrificing their life so that they can win the battle, so that there can be a difference made in years to come. And the greatest thing about it is, for Little Round Top, they fought in an isolated, closed off like area. And for athletes, you practice in private so you can perform in public. These men practiced in private and then died in private so that we could have a better life.
This idea of telling your story, it's important. If anybody else goes to the far side of the field, they don't know anything about William Oates. They don't know about the 26 miles, and they don't know about his brother. Because if he couldn't have it his way, he didn't want to tell his story at all. There's probably also a lesson there for us too.
So to see that they gave their life knowing that they may not get any glory for it is incredible, because we kind of do something in private to get glory in public.
Could you run this program back at the Naval Academy and in a pristine room like this with the movie of Gettysburg, let them watch it and then talk about the lessons learned, the key players, the decisions that were made? Absolutely. But you bring them up to this hallowed ground and they stand there and they look across the mile plus at Pickett's charge at the wheat field, you know, for day 3 at Gettysburg. And then they walk it and they see, and they imagine cannon fire, musket ball, people falling as we tighten the ranks up as they walk forward, and you know, because we call out numbers and they fall out.
You would be one company in one of 13 regiments in Pickett's division. Uniform, drop out. Close ranks, close ranks. Alpha, you're out. Tango, you're out.
Well, it kind of highlights the difference now that how we fight versus back then, because that was really incredible when they said, all right, all the A's are gone, and you look like, wow, they're out of everybody we started with, there's maybe a quarter of what we had. So it really just kind of puts it in perspective, you know, where we were and how far we've come since then. So it was really eye-opening.
You really couldn't hide, so you definitely have to be loyal to not just yourself, but those around you that you're fighting with. And that just struck me. I mean, to be able to look at the other side, look at your enemy and just charge at full force, knowing that maybe you wouldn't make it out, that was pretty heavy. That they followed their leader through thick, very thick.
They get a chance to understand the decisions that were made and the influencers who could have changed them. The influencers who made a stand based on an uncompromising standard. You cannot let this flank be rolled. You know, I got it. This means I'm here. We do not fall back. That's the uncompromising standard. Then you turn to all your men at that point, men and women today, and you say, we're out of ammunition, but we can't fall back because we can't give up this position. The loyalty. Loyalty to the standard, loyalty to the commander, loyalty to my men, but I'm going to risk their lives because the loyalty to the standard trumps loyalty to my men. I'm going to give them the opportunity to survive, but we can't fall back. We're going to accomplish this mission. And then the last one is having a bias for action. All around the battlefield, you'll see where one man, one individual made a stand, made a difference with a bias for action that turned the tide of that battle, which eventually turned the tide of the Battle of Gettysburg. So, you know, it's like, well, I'm only one person, you know? Well, think back to some of the great stands and calls made by one person throughout this battle.
Gang, my hope for you is, as you leave the high ground and go back into the valley, you do so with a contagion of their courage and with a kind of desperate joy, and with the knowledge that the whole American family is counting on you.